yeah, no, thank you so much for coming on. For those who don't know, Craig is actually one of our customers, and he reached out to us on an email at a time where, I really needed to see it, and I think Buta did as well. I think it was beginning of January, if I'm not, was it beginning of January or sometime around then? Yeah. And it was just, we hit a bit of a breaking point. It was a new year, still the pandemic, back in lockdown. So we were, just a bit, I guess, confused as to where we were going and our vision and everything. And I think Craig really put us back in our place and inspired us to kind of continue and motivate us. So I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and tell your story, because I feel like you'll tell it much better than I do.
Yeah, so the shortened version really was my dad passed away in December 2019. It was really such a struggle. He was my best friend. He was my confidant. He was my right arm or my left arm, however you want to put it. We were never separated, and he was just a huge part of my life. I never realized just how much of a struggle it was going to be. And if I'm honest, it continues to be that struggle, but it does get easier. The story in terms of Leiho was that around about January this year, I'd gone down to visit my mum, and she had looked at my feet and noticed there was holes in my socks, and she said, "Oh, you'll have to get new socks." And if I'm honest, it was really just the last thing on my mind. I couldn't care less about getting new socks. I couldn't care less that I'd had holes in the soles of my socks. It might have been something I cared about a long time ago, but no. And I began to think after that conversation, my dad wouldn't want me not to be taking care of myself or not looking after my well-being. And I guess that, I started to think about that a little bit more, and I thought, oh, I'll buy some socks. But I stumbled across Leiho site really just looking online to buy socks. But what really struck me was that, and I think the website made me smile. What was really important was the socks were brightly colored. They had a smile to them. They had a bit of laughter, and that's something I hadn't had for pretty much over a year. I'd lost that in myself, and I caught myself smiling and thinking, well, this is nice, and I thought I must have these socks. But then the more I read about the story behind buying the pair of socks and donating another pair of socks to the homeless, and then your other wonderful products like the water bottles, where you provide water to those that need it. Simple things making a huge difference, and that was what encouraged me to become a customer, but also encouraged me to tell you that little bit about my story as well.
Yeah, that's really lovely. Yeah, no, thank you. And maybe tell us a bit about yourself, like, just your story and, what you do, because, you do a lot of stuff, I guess you mentioned, with like volunteering and stuff, but just a bit of background.
Yeah, so the pandemic's changed a lot of things in terms of the volunteering that I did, but my background is, I've always been involved volunteering or with charitable causes. I can go back quite some time and say that the first real volunteering I did was with the Boys Brigade, which I'm sure everyone knows is a nationwide or a worldwide organization. And I was 36 years in the Boys Brigade as a boy, and then subsequently an officer looking after boys. that was a huge part of my life. That really, I guess, provided a structure to know that I always wanted to do these kind of things, particularly work with children. I guess I see myself as a little bit of Peter Pan. I just feel I've never grown up, and I guess that's a good thing in a way. And that really was, I guess, a starting block for me volunteering. From that, youth clubs, I began to run some youth clubs that spanned became as a result of the Boys Brigade, and that was for boys and girls. And again, I set up and ran that. Most recently, and I guess the thing I'm most passionate about is that I do a lot of volunteering for a local charity in Aberdeen, where I come from, called Befriend a Child.
Yeah.
Befriend a Child is a local organisation that looks after youngsters who are vulnerable, who maybe come from difficult home circumstances, and need a role model or need somebody to meet on a regular basis, just as a distraction from maybe all the difficult things that are going on in their life.
Yeah.
I've looked after 4 boys over a course of 20 years in that organisation, and I currently look after a boy, and I've looked after him for now 6 years. The motto of the organisation is turn a frown upside down. I'm so passionate about the organisation because you can see the results.
Yeah.
And the difference that it makes. It's such a simple concept. The concept is just taking out a child for every fortnight for 2-3 hours, but the difference that can make to some of these children is massive, simply because of the difficulties that they're having at home.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds up my street as well. I love doing stuff like that. I think even like, from a young age, I've always, I guess, going to an international school, we were always kind of pushed to make a difference, but there was always a part of me that knew that there were 3 things that would make me happy and just forget about whatever my worries are. And even till this day, I could be surrounded, and I'm never really alone. I either with my family or friends, and I'm always surrounded by people, but then I can still feel so lonely. But the one thing that I feel like makes me forget about anything and just takes me to, I guess, a whole new world is just volunteering or working with people, which is, when we do our outreaches, it's just like I'm not thinking about anything and my focus is just with them, and it just makes such a big difference in my personal well-being and mental health. And it just, it feels a little hole in my heart, and it's just really, really nice. And the work that you do also sounds really amazing, and it's just, I think last year I tried to do befriend an elderly as well. There's always a space in my heart for, but then, I just got really busy, and I think the application process was really long, and then I started Leiho. But I think, that's definitely something I would want to do in the future as well, which is really, really nice. So.
Yeah. Definitely. Thank you so much, Craig, for taking the time to share your story, firstly, and for being so transparent with us as well. It's just really refreshing and so nice to be able to finally meet you, even if it's through Zoom. But how are you enjoying your experience with volunteering? Can you tell us a little bit about, what impact it's made on you as well?
I think it's, the charity talks about the impact that it makes on the children. And that without a doubt is primary. But I would go as far to say that the impact that it's made on me personally is just as big. I think I wouldn't be the person I am now had it not been for volunteering. And I think that what it does, or what it did for me, it still does, is it takes you out of your comfort zone. It brings home realities, which I think is important to understand. I think we can all get very much sometimes caught up in our own bubble and not be aware of what is happening in the outside world, and not be aware of the struggles that some people do have. And I think that I've had a lot of struggles this past year and a bit that I never imagined I would have had. But having the volunteering, having that still behind me made such a difference. Meeting that young boy, I didn't meet him as much because of the pandemic, but when I did meet him, it made me forget a lot of my troubles, even if it was just for that 1 hour or that 2 hours. It made me forget about me and put the focus on him.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is for me what it's all about. It's about, and he's been great for me too. You know, he is only a child. He's 13, but he's been wonderful for my own mental health too. I don't know. I think he's made such a difference. I don't think I would be moving forward the way I am had it not been for him.
Yeah.
I think it's so important to just sometimes break away from your own comfort zone, your own problems, and focus a little bit on others, because focusing on the others will then, I think, help yourself.
Yeah. It's so nice to have that sense of connection as well with the people that you're working with, volunteering with. I think it's so important. Like, it's great that you're doing it on a regular basis as well, so you can actually build that relationship. And it's just so much more than just volunteering. It's for your own mental health, and also helping that other person, and you're kind of building a friendship too, in a way, right?
Yeah,
So
totally.
there's the overall impact is, I think, is a lot more than
And you're creating lifelong friendships as well. Just because it's through that charity, I mean, our relationship through the charity will eventually end, but our relationship together will never end. I mean, I'll always be, hopefully always be part of his life, and I hope that he'll always be part of my life too.
Oh, that's nice. You should send this to him so you can have a little listen. And I think like compassion and empathy and stuff, it does teach us. You said you learned a lot from them, and I actually feel the same way. I think most of my important lessons obviously come from life experiences and friendships, relationships and stuff, but the core kind of who I am comes a lot from the things that I've done for people in need, or just like, because it really does put you in your place, and it does, like you said, make you forget about your troubles. And it's that connection and having, it's just that compassion, and that whole, I think people underestimate how similar we all are to each other. It doesn't matter, our color, our age, who we are, we're all pretty much the same. And whenever we speak to, or if we ever volunteer, like I remember I volunteered with an orphanage school, and I just remember thinking, like, all these kids growing up, they were really happy playing ball and stuff, and I was like, we were exactly the same. It's just kind of in different environments, so yeah, I think that's really, really nice to have that, like you said, connection.
I think we are all the same. I think one of the things that's been really crucial for me this past couple of years, I've had to open up quite a lot about feelings and emotions and things that I always did with my dad, but with him no longer there, I needed a sounding board, and I ended up talking to a lot of different people, close friends and sometimes strangers also, and counselors and many different people. But one of the things that really struck me was that we all have struggles, we all have difficulties, and there's not a panacea out there. There's not a there's nobody out there who is living the perfect life without something that they're having to deal with. And I think, not that I felt good that other people were struggling, I don't mean that, but it did feel good that sometimes you can have that connection. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And we always talk about the phrase feel good, do good, or do good, feel good. And it's like, you know, can you really feel good by doing it? And, you know, personally, I think you can, because it's like you said, you know, you're really taking yourself out of your bubble and really connecting with them and helping them. And it's just a whole different experience, you know, than speaking to like a normal friend or whatever. And, you know, that goes without saying. We're not saying we're not saying that we feel like good that someone else is less fortunate and we're having that connection, but it's just being able to help makes you feel more like worthy, and it makes you feel more, I guess, whole.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And you're right in terms of, you know, opening up. I think the last year or 2 years, I mean, I still struggle opening up, and the more people you talk to, I feel like strangers sometimes are always the best people to open up to. Yeah. But no, we'll keep going. I guess, do you have any kind of, I guess, top tips on opening up or getting through like your tough days, you know?
Yeah. I think, to be brutally honest, every day since my dad has died has had a tough element to it. I'm actually, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say that, you know, everything is okay now, because it's not. But I think what I've noticed getting through tough days is the small things that matter. It is really, you begin to notice the little things, and it is then the little things that make the difference. So it's not the big life-changing moment or the big decision to move house or to go on holiday. Not that we could go on holiday last year, but it's not these big, to me, it's not these big decisions that make the difference. Sometimes the most amazing thing for me has been just going for a walk. Just going for a walk. And even I started to do something I don't think I would have ever done before, which was just smile and say hello to a stranger as I pass them. And again, that's such a simple thing, but you know, when everything's going okay and you're in your little own bubble, you maybe don't notice what's around you, but then maybe sometimes when you are struggling a little bit, you begin to notice things, I sometimes think, a little bit more clearly. And and back to those little things like smiling at a stranger, you know, a Skype call with a friend, you know, I won't name names on here in case he sees it, because he'd be so embarrassed. But, you know, I have a really good friend that's been there unconditionally for me since my dad passed away. And that's been so important. It's just a Skype call, but it's been so important. Just talking to somebody. Meditation, I guess, as well. That's something that I've started doing. And that's been a great help to me.
Nice. I tried. So my sister's got into meditating. She's like, you have to try it. I always feel like every time I meditate, I just end up thinking about other things, but I do really need to try it. Yeah, it is. How long have you been, I guess, meditating for?
Well, I really probably just a couple of months. It's an online class. It's actually a Buddhist meditation class.
Okay.
And they do lots of different courses and meditations. They have a big calendar of events, but they do a lunchtime one, which is half an hour, and it's really worthwhile.
Yeah.
No, that's really nice.
Cool. No, I wanted to add on the meditation thing, because my mom is really big and passionate about that as well, and I've been trying to do myself. And Joey, you mentioned, like, you know, when you meditate, I feel like people start to overthink things, and then usually you're supposed to just focus on nothing or just something. But apparently my mom was saying, like, don't let that stop you. If you have to think about other things, then just think about it. And just, you know, meditation is kind of like you time, it's me time, I guess. And then just sit, and then if you have to just think about things, think. And just find how you can kind of navigate through your thoughts, and find like a state of peace, I suppose. So that's like one tip from my mom anyways, for meditating. And I think there's so many different ways to do it, but yeah, it's just one of those things. And I think it's a great way to kind of, you know, get through like a tough day, whether it's if you do it at the end of the day or in the beginning, or like you, Craig, during lunchtime, just kind of seeing what works for you. And I think that's kind of also key to finding out how you can turn your crown upside down, I suppose.
Definitely. Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. Totally agree. I've actually found the meditation quite hard. So, like you said, it can be very hard to switch off, and I mean, they teach you to have a clear mind. That is the ultimate goal. But if that's very hard to achieve, particularly, I guess in our society, where, you know, particularly when you're working or running a business and everything's happening and everything's going 100 miles an hour, it's really, really hard to achieve that. I mean, I've found it difficult, but one of the things that's taught me is that I've got to keep trying at this. And you know, because it's hard, maybe is because it's making a difference. You know, if it was easy, then I don't need to do it. But so I think from that perspective, it's something I'll continue to do.
Consistency is key. I do need to try it. I think you're also right. I think now, you know, we're being fed like thousands and thousands of information, more than our brain and memory can even handle. You know, every single minute, whether it's social media, everything, our brain are constantly receiving information. So it just makes it so much harder than, you know, generations ago, because now it's just a whole new level of, you know, our brains are just wired differently. So I think, it probably comes to, I guess, consistency. And I guess, you know, that leads me on to speaking of, like, you know, feeding brains with loads of information. We have a lot of busy bees out there. And, you know, people not knowing, I guess, how to commit their time towards doing good. And I guess what would be your, you know, because you do a lot of good, whether it's, you know, buying from businesses that give back or volunteering or taking your time off. What would you suggest for people who are just super busy, working 9 till 9, weekends they want to prioritize to see their friends or family? How would you, I guess, suggest them to make positive impact and feed that into a schedule?
I think if you feel that I think when you start volunteering, I think because of the rewards that you can get from it, it will automatically fit into your schedule. I think you will actually end up making that time for it. I mean, I know a lot of companies now actively encourage volunteering and will actually, in some instances, give you time back to do that. I think for me, I did volunteering when maybe I didn't have the time and had a lot of other things, but I was quite happy to maybe let the other things maybe take a little bit of back seat, because it was the volunteering that gave me so much self-worth and actually gave me the most pleasure. And I mean, okay, if you're working 9 till 9 every day, you know, fitting that in is extremely difficult. But, you know, even a simple thing like buying a pair of socks from your fantastic company, doing that simple thing is making a difference. And I think even connecting with different charities and organizations that you feel passionate about. A lot of these organizations are always looking for volunteers, even if it's just an hour a week or a couple of hours a week. I think, you know, we can all do that. And it's a feel-good factor that you get from it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think, so I remember beginning of January 2 years ago, I had hit quite a low point in my life as well. And I this was at the beginning of my master's, before I met Thuta and before Leiho ever started. And I was just searching for different ways to help people, because I knew, even at a young age, that what would make me happy, like I said before, or what would make me forget, is volunteering or helping someone in need. So I was looking at crisis centers, and then I was looking at the befriend an elderly. And then I wanted to train. I got into mental health because I was very passionate about just, raising awareness for mental health. So then I joined this crisis center. I did the training, and then I had a breakdown because I was like, if I can't even help myself, how can I help someone else? And then eventually, we started Leiho, and then I kind of dedicated my impact there. So yeah, I definitely think, there's a point where you might feel, before you even start volunteering, say you're not feeling amazing or you're a bit sad, it is the consistency. Maybe the first time might not go as planned, or the second time, but that having that consistency of impact really does make a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. I think actually the time to volunteer is maybe when you're not feeling so good. Or maybe when you actually feel that, you or question whether you should do it. Because I think if you go into particularly talking about mental health, for example, talking about mental health, I think, we all have a mental health, and to be volunteering, if you consider your mental health to be perfect, in some respects, I think if you acknowledge your own struggles, it's a great way of helping other people with theirs. And I don't think there's any right or wrong time to start volunteering, but I certainly couldn't have done without it recently.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah. Now I want to do more. We're doing an outreach on Wednesday, so I'm really excited about that.
Excellent.
Yeah. No, it's good. And I think, during the toughest times, the things that really do put us back in our place is just being with people. It doesn't have to be volunteering. It's just really being there with family, friends, strangers, and just really connecting. I think the human connection is what a lot of people underestimate, especially if your mental health isn't great. You don't want to speak to anyone, but the one thing that will probably get you through that is really just speaking to someone. And it doesn't have to be about your feelings, but just having that human connection and just being with people is, what will probably help as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think the pandemic has had a huge effect on people's mental health. And I think that's from an isolation point of view, not having that human contact. We're human beings. We need to be with other human beings. It's just a natural process, and we need that personal connection. And as great as things are, like Skype and Zoom and everything for connecting with people, it doesn't replace that actual, physicality of being together. And I believe that, the pandemic is a huge thing we've had to deal with. But I think after that's passed, I think people's mental health is going to be something that we're going to have to really look at. And that's going to be, I don't want to say a crisis, but I think a lot of people are going to come out of this and need help with their mental health.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we did a mental health podcast the other day, and statistics are rising. And even me, like I always feel a bit scared going out now, not necessarily because of coronavirus, but it's just more, the past year we've just been in lockdown, and we've been so used to living at home, and then suddenly going back into the real world is just a bit scary. So I think a lot of people will be going through that. And
definitely.
I think it's I think we mentioned in the podcast that it's about taking baby steps, I guess. Never, obviously it's nice to push yourself out of your comfort zone sometimes, but also making sure that you're taking care of yourself. You're not forcing yourself to do something that you don't want to. And yeah, and that kind of to our last question. You know, now I feel like obviously growing up, we've learned a lot about ourselves, and then through our jobs and, you know, our volunteering and everything, like I feel like we're still learning, but we have a better idea of what works and what doesn't. And if you were to ask to give advice to your younger self right now, what would it be?
It's a really good question.
Take your time.
I think the advice I would definitely give to my younger self is that the past is the past. I think, you know, I heard this phrase that the past is the past, the future is not predictable, but it's the present that's important, and that's what we can influence. And I guess that comes a little bit from the meditation side of things, which tries to teach you to be in that moment and not think about what's coming next and not think about what has gone before. And you know, from a personal point of view, I think a lot of the time we get very hung up on things that have happened in the past and things that we have maybe done or regrets or things we would have done differently. And I know for myself that that's a huge thing. That is a big part of my life that I'm working on now. Not that I have any major regrets, but everybody looks back, and I think it's looking back and not trying to change anything, because you can't change the past, but you can change the present, and hopefully that in turn will change the future. So yeah, I think I would be a wee bit more worldly wise.
Yeah, no, that was beautifully said. I literally, I completely agree. There was this, I don't know if this is the best reference, it's like from a chick flick, but it basically said, it's from, I think it was 17 again, and they basically said, you know, when you're young, everything feels like the end of the world, which is so true. You have one problem, and it's just like, you know, we do dwell in the past quite a bit, and I do personally as well. I do look past at like past, yeah, things that have happened, and I try and replay that in my head and think of all the what ifs of what if I did this or what if I did that. But then that stops me from, you know, living in the present and doing things, because I'm just really living in the past. And then if you think too much far in the future, then you can't predict, like you said, you can't predict the future. So, you know, no one predicted COVID-19, so you can't predict anything that's going to happen. So the best way to live is in the present and just take every day as it is.
Totally agree.
But yeah, oh, thank you so much. It was really, really lovely having you on here. I'm sure we got a lot of words of wisdom, and I'm like ready to start working again.
It was lovely to talk to you both. Definitely.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you as well.